I have not left my house in 22 days. He has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall.
Do as you're told.
Greetings, survivors. Welcome back to Disenthrall. I am Patrick Smith. Today we have with us the Shawn Jones. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Greetings.
So, good to see you're alive and well. We have been leading sort of opposite lives this past week or two. I've been literally quarantined in my house for reasons that we'll get into, and I have not made any content on this topic yet for reasons I'll get into. You, on the other hand, have been doing everything I want to be doing, which is you are out there, you are helping people, donating food, you are bringing goods, much needed goods to the people that need it, homeless people and all sorts of stuff. And you are out there in the world, you know, ready to do the defiant activism that it's seeming like we're getting closer to needing that I can't participate in right now. So if you, I have literally not left. We quarantined early for reasons I'll get into, and I have not left my house in 22 days. Tell us what you've been doing, Shawn.
Besides just trying to stay sane and homeschool a teenager, I have been trying to work with the Soupmobile Church downtown. So last several days, I've been fortunate enough, people have been donating me money. I sit around at night, prep a bunch of sandwiches, 40 to 60 at a time. Get up in the morning, drive them down there, drop them off. Some of the guys that are doing that are a little bit older. So if there's a lot of stuff already dropped off, I stick around, hang out, help them move it into the church. And, they've got a pretty nice organized system going on there. Popped over to the Austin Street shelter a couple of days ago and dropped off. I had some great friends that Amazoned me a bunch of socks and deodorants. And I got a care package of like 60 snacks today to go drop off to them tomorrow. Drove around, picked up a bunch of feminine hygiene products today, as well as some, soaps and other just general hygiene things. I'll drop those off and some blankets. And then also people have been donating money for Feed the City, which is a sandwich making event that I usually do on Saturday mornings with my son. And obviously because of the quarantine, nobody can gather to do this, so they're just dropping off food supplies, and they've got kind of a list of preferred things. And so I've also had the good fortune that people have been sending money to my PayPal that can't get out for whatever reason, doesn't even matter, and send me the money, and then I go do the shopping for everybody and deliver it. So that's at least how I'm trying to keep some of my mind occupied and time occupied. So.
Yeah, so we have a local communication methods for the local activists and the local voluntarists here in the area, and those have been highly more active than they've ever been before for the past several weeks. And there's a lot of cool plans that are being activated, prepping, finally being justified, and people doing cool things like ham radio projects so that people can communicate if things start continue getting worse. But before anybody was doing anything, my wife and I were seeing the reports of this just getting started in China, and then we saw it, hit the U.S., and we consulted with my, daughter's doctors. For those that don't know, she's had leukemia. She's been in treatment for it for a couple years. So, and the only children that have died from this thing yet have been kids with problems, one of which was leukemia. So we have been extra paranoid on purpose, and we went on lockdown extra early because we understood that this thing has a long, what do they call it, incubation period or something like that, where there's a lot of people that could be spreading it without even knowing they have it. And so we just made the choice to go on lockdown extra early. And we have been so glad that we did that, because the world outside of the walls of my house has just been losing its entire mind. Much thanks to the governments of the world for that. But in general, we're in a happy, protected sort of quarantined bubble. And we were able to get all the resources and food and stuff that we needed way earlier. So, before everybody freaked out and emptied out the grocery store. So we've been generally pretty comfortable here. But I mean, so the reason why I haven't made it, and it's been 22 videos or 22 days, we've been quarantined here, and I haven't made content on this yet. Why? Because I generally always try and not do what a lot of people have been doing, which is talk out of their ass. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. Granted, I have sources that are sending me information on all this stuff constantly. But just like you guys, I have no metric of telling, what's credible, what's not credible. And the last thing I want to do is spread disinformation on this platform, on this channel. I have nightmares about doing that stuff. So I just keep my mouth shut and handle my own business. And that's what we've been doing. And I thought that now that we're starting to see how it's rolling out, and the government responses that are coming, and the effects that stuff is having on the world in terms of tyranny, outright tyranny that we see unfolding out, under us, literally, that it was time to have the talk about COVID 1984, which is what I'm calling it these days. So that is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to invite my friend Shawn here on the show to do it with me. So I want to make sure, I know that you're not going to do this, and I'm just going to say for myself that nothing I say in this show I will state as fact, unless anything I give you that's opinion, I will clearly label as opinion. I want to be really clear that this is coming from a layman perspective, and not only that, but my specific situation and the decisions we're making related to health and quarantine and staying in our house is way different than most of the world. So if I tell you what I'm doing, this is not me suggesting that's what anybody out there should do, because your situation is totally different. In fact, if my daughter didn't have this medical situation, I would be out there with Shawn helping people and, potentially risking infection. Then of course I'd probably stay away from older people, or my mother and things like that because it seems to be affecting them more. But I'm just saying that, just want to make it clear up front to everybody that what I'm doing is different than what you guys are doing, right? So, okay. And chime in if you agree or disagree, but I'm pretty sure this is a truth statement. All of the experts' early predictions were wrong. And I think that bears pointing out. All of the experts' early predictions were vast overestimations of, I think, everything except how infectious it was. And in fact, I think when we're talking about how infectious it is, I'm pretty sure all, if not most, of the experts were underestimated. So they either got it under or over by a significant amount. It seems to be far less deadly than they predicted. Would you agree with that?
From everything that I have read and from most people that I've talked to, it is not. The numbers aren't matching the trajectory that we were led to believe at all.
And I think the other thing that can be said as a truth statement is that all of the policies that the experts recommended that have been enacted by governments around the world have almost exclusively made things worse than it probably otherwise would have been. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
Well, worse for the people, not worse for the government.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
and that's
nice little power grab they have happening.
Yeah. I mean, that it's like a wet dream, and that's what I wanted to talk about. So first, let's lead with maybe some stats on exactly what's happening. And this is going to be for Texas, but I mean, it's like this in most other major cities at this point. There's been 26 deaths and this is live updating, I think, at this point. Yeah, this was updated 3 minutes ago. That number went up since when I loaded this page, I believe. So almost 2,000.
150.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, this is following that exponential curve that we sort of predicted, right? Or, you know, the graphs predicted, I guess. I shouldn't say we predicted because, who the hell am I? But what seems to be happening now, as governments are going on lockdown and sort of turning up the knob of tyranny, which we can talk about the ways in which they're doing that, the people around here, at least in Texas, have been very quiet. They've been very, I don't know.
Docile?
Yeah, compared to normal attempts at government tyranny in Texas, they have really let a lot of it go. Especially like the gun rights activists and the street activists that you usually see out there resisting stuff like orders on pain of arrest and fine and punishment to stay in your houses. This is literally happening in Texas, and we can talk about that too. But there hasn't been a whole lot of resistance. But then we look at China, and we see like actual riots happening in China. So like one of the things we were worried about early on is the protests in China and Hong Kong were like, a lot of the conspiracy theorists, may or may not rightly so, you can agree or disagree, was that, maybe this virus was, maybe this is when we get demonetized. I'll just say that some people say that, the virus was very effective at ending the street protests going on in Hong Kong. And I think a lot of people were worried that freedom movement over there was basically ended by this thing. And for better or worse, it seems that some riots are starting to spring back up over there, and we're seeing reports of this stuff happening like today as we speak. So maybe the freedom movement in Hong Kong is not quite dead yet. Apparently they're beating police with their own shields and overturning cop cars. So again, just making, Americans look a little, what's the word that doesn't get you banned? Cucked? No, that one, that's not good. We can't say that.
America's getting out America. We'll say that. America's getting out America.
Exactly. Liberty After Dark says, "Oi, you got a license for that opinion?" Yeah, exactly. It's a political money grab to steal from the old and bankrupt the young, scare the pants off you all so you submit. Exactly. I have a quote on my Facebook page that I will pull up exactly that. The whole aim, this is H.L. Mencken said, the whole aim of practical politics is to keep the populace alarmed and hence clamorous to be led to safety by menacing it with an endless series of hobgoblins, all of them imaginary. And I think even more so than that is that the hobgoblins don't always have to be imaginary. They just have to take advantage of every possible opportunity they can to gain control. And I was jump in here if you have something to say.
I thought, I was just thinking with the hobgoblins being real or not, it kind of leads to what I've been thinking about this the entire time is, I don't dispute that COVID-19 exists. It's here, whatever it is. I'm not convinced that we know exactly what we're dealing with. But the fear, even though the numbers are showing that it's not growing at the rate that they said it was, and it's not killing at the rate that they claimed it was, we're still seeing people clamor for more and more restrictions, even though the data doesn't really support their desire for it. So it's kind of going back to, it doesn't matter whether it's real or fiction. People's belief in it is what's moving everything at this point.
Certainly. And, I'm always careful not to apply malicious intent to individual government employees by default, just because I think I used to work for the FAA and the Air Force. I wrote code, and the employees inside there really are well-intentioned. They're good people trying to do good things in the best way they know how, and they think they're working for a noble cause. And but there's also this thing that I noticed there. It's that there's always an unspoken subconscious pressure for government employees to justify their existence. Now, I don't know if it's because they realize that most of their jobs are really superfluous and probably wouldn't exist in a free market. I doubt that's conscious for most of them. But they do. They try and constantly look for excuses to justify their job. Because, I guess every so often, every quarter or whatever, they have a budget that gets approved, or every year a budget gets approved. And, so everybody does kind of have to sort of re-justify their job repeatedly. And so what things like this do, and this is me giving like maybe the Occam's razor explanation for why government grows so quickly in here, without assuming malicious overlord, Illuminati intent control, which I'm sure you could talk about if you'd like, but is that they see this as an opportunity to be like, oh, well, this is my job and I'm going to keep people safe by enacting this legislation. Like, enacting legislation in their mind is them doing their job and helping people and earning their paycheck and earning their job. And when shit like this comes along, that's their chance. That's their opportunity to, do something. Unfortunately, anytime government does something, it's, forceful and consent violating and all that good stuff. But, yeah, what do you think about that?
It reminds me of the scene in Office Space where Peter is talking to the Bobs, and he goes, on an average day, I probably do about 15 minutes of actual work. That's, and that is kind of it. Everybody's doing TPS reports. Everybody's trying to stay busy. Everybody, like you said, is trying to justify their paycheck. That everybody knows that that employers are fickle to a certain extent, and that if they have the opportunity to step on or over somebody to make a little bit more money, they will do it. So it does, like you said, I don't believe a lot of these people are twisting their mustache and, Monty Burns steepling their hands, trying to figure out exactly how they can screw me out of my freedom. But they're just myopically focused on self-preservation. And that myopathy is that blindness to everything going around while trying to maintain your self-preservation seems to be, that's the primrose path that leads everybody to kind of what we're at now, kicking the can down the line, trying to preserve their own way of life.
There's also it's like a twisted feedback loop that happens. So like, let's just say, for example, that the governor of New York, had a libertarian moment And, this whole thing broke, and he was like, yeah, this is terrible. I suggest that you guys probably, stay in your houses as much as possible. Try not to expose yourself. Try not to expose elderly. But that's kind of the end of what we're going to do. And, maybe we'll work extra shifts to keep you guys safe in the process, but let's just say he had that moment. Like, he would be ousted on his ass like that evening because people would say, oh, well, he's not doing his job. He's not doing what we need the governor of this state to do. And so, like, that's a motivation for those people in power to make up things to do. Whereas otherwise, even if they had a libertarian bone in their body, which they don't, they would probably make better decisions. So it's the tyrants, but it's also the people's demand on the tyrants, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely. People want action, even if it's bad action. They don't care about the actual consequence. They just want to feel like somebody is doing something and that we're moving in a direction. It doesn't matter that it's off a cliff with the rest of the herd. It's something needs to be done. The practice of patience is not really part of our society, and part of our culture. We want action and we want it now. This needs to be done immediately. One child died. We need to strip it all away, instead of looking at the data, stepping back and looking at a larger view of what's going on, and then asking the stumping question of, okay, what unintended consequences might happen from implementing these policies? Nobody ever wants to talk about what's on the other side. They got to take action, got to do it now, got to do something, instant gratification, make me feel safe, and do it immediately.
And there's thanks, Jim Jesus, for the $2. He says, delicious Negra Modelo. Guillotine go burr. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Guillotine go burr. I'm pretty sure we'd be pushing a guillotine around out there if so many of the local activists weren't staying safe right now. And we're seeing riots in Paris, France today, defying their lockdown, which gives me some hope. Because, like, for me, I didn't really mind staying in my house until the government here ordered me to. That's when I wanted to go outside with my middle fingers, because it's one thing to just make responsible choices for your health and for your family, and it's another to be forcibly detained and imprisoned in your home, which is a point that I think this is a teaching opportunity for libertarians to make in the world right now, and that is to say that this goes to consent to the governed. So every time the government does or takes some new liberty that they have not previously taken, it's a teaching moment, exactly like now. And what I mean by that is you can talk to normies and you can say, look, that consent of the governed thing that you think, justifies everything the government does, from taxation to, war. Well, did you consent to being imprisoned in your home in the case of a virus? Because they literally cannot say yes to that question, because until now, that was not a thing that they knew the government could do. Like, this is a new thing that the government is doing, unless they're one of the half of a percent that actually read the CDC's documents where they claim that power. And I say claim because, no one gives it to them. No one consents to that. But you can't post facto claim that you are acting with the consent of the governed. That's not how consent works. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the boogeyman in that, and I'll use like what I generally predominantly hear from the left, is the boogeyman verbiage of for the general welfare of the people. And that whether it was done deliberately to just avoid conflict and get the document passed, or whether it was deliberately done knowing that it could be such an open-ended statement. When the founding fathers wrote for the general welfare of the people, man, that means a lot of things to a lot of people. Bernie bros think high-speed internet is part of the general welfare of the people, so I think there are, sadly, a lot of people who will lump this experience in and actually validate the government's existence and overreach in doing this under that super vague general welfare. It still makes me want to stab myself in the eye that people think this way, but people want to feel safe and want to feel altruistic and noble and like they're doing good. And the general welfare of the people, sounds really palatable to a lot.
Even to the Bernie bros, though, this is a teaching moment. This is hey, this was a previously undelineated power that the government is declaring they already have and have had. And it's just like worth saying, hey, did you consent to that? Did they ask? That's a better way of saying it. Did they ask you for your permission to be subjected to that treatment? Because literally they asked no one. Like, they asked no one. So it's a teaching moment. It's a moment to have that conversation. And, even if they say, well, yeah, I consent to this because blah, 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 general welfare, social contract, blah, blah, blah. You can say, okay, but, is there a line in the sand that you don't consent to? And if there is, what is it? And based on what it is, where is what you just said written? And where has the government ever held itself to that standard? It's moments like these where you need to talk to these people about it. Hey, Otto, good to see you. Hey, Phobes. Hey, one of those guys. Good to see you in the chat. So this was the big sort of bomb that dropped in Texas that I personally was surprised that this happened. Maybe I'm naive. I guess I am a little bit naive in Texas because I still have some kind of statist pride in this area, even though it's just full of Republicans. I'm sorry, Shawn. I'm working on it.
No, I'm actually very much the same way. We're kind of probably about the last generation that, Texas history was the first actual history I took, and I was a secessionist from the time that I found out that Texas, allegedly had, part of their constitutional right to secede. So, it's getting rid of the Texas Kool-Aid that we are brought up in is a difficult thing. And I find probably if I'm going to cling to any affiliation, my Texas roots are going to be it, even though the Texas that I loved, as a child, I'm not sure it actually ever existed, but I know it certainly no longer exists. So I still have an emotional, romantic attachment in a sense to the idea that everything is bigger and better in Texas. So I completely get it. I catch myself from time to time.
Yeah, and it is catching because it is wrong. It is incorrect. Texas seems to be pretty much just as C-worded as most of the other country at this point. But so this just happened today. Texas National Guard troops could do door-to-door checkups around Dallas to check on residences. Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins said. Clay Jenkins is doing a lot of tyrannical stuff without seeming any recourse in Texas. I'm just disappointed. He said Texas National Guard troops would be on a medical mission and not there for law enforcement reasons. They would check in with people to see who may have come in contact with coronavirus patients. They are talking about deploying Texas National Guard troops here in Texas. Like, if this isn't boogaloo triggering talk, what is? What is, Shawn? If this isn't it, what is?
I I had this conversation with a good friend of mine yesterday who's he's in the medical technology industry, and he's nerds out for virus stuff. So this is like he's been thinking about this pandemic for probably a decade. And he's a very big advocate of the shut-in program and love him dearly. But we absolutely disagree on this, because for me, this is about a freedom of choice issue and self-ownership. And this is really even more than that. Is this power grab translates to my son's future and his ability to govern himself. And, as I reminded him and others, never in history does a government seize a liberty, a freedom, a privilege, a right, whatever you want to call it, in the name of safety, and then give it back when it's over. Never. It doesn't happen. 5,000 years ago in whatever kingdom there was, and some king was baiting his people that the kingdom on the other side of the hill wants what we have. Always. They never give the power back. And so, it's again going back to that myopathy that people have. They're so focused on trying to feel safe about the immediate that they can't think about the long-term implications of this. And I'm super sad to not see more outrage by Texans. Like I don't know why there aren't grown men standing in the front yard with their AR right now. Like I don't understand it.
So it brought up two things to mind that I wrote down in my notes that I want to talk about based on what you just said. The first one was I saw a live stream today with Walter Block talking to somebody else. I think Daniel is the guy's name. His YouTube channel is Daniel the Sexiest. I don't think many people sub to him, but he used to do quite a bit of libertarian content and a lot of interviews with Walter Block. And in this discussion, they were talking about what is the libertarian position that, on this outbreak and the right of people to be forcibly quarantined in their house. And I'm not going to put words in his mouth, and I'm not going to attack him when he's not here, but I was very surprised by the sort of lack of a strong position that he had on this. He appealed to, continuum problems of, what constitutes a threat worthy of, a forcible defense. And, he was talking about, a virus can be a very real deadly threat to a person. And so if, somebody is infected and they're coming at you, and maybe you're an older person or somebody with issues that would make the, virus a deadly threat, could you respond appropriately to that incoming threat? And he just basically said, I don't know if, what the government should be doing. I don't know if the government should be able to do some of the stuff it's doing. And I was like, what is happening? What is that? I hard disagree. The answer, because I'm sitting here and I guess, what's the word? When a reporter is talking about something and he's got a relationship with the person on the side, what do you call that? Not fair warning. It's like, look, I am a huge fan of Walter Block. I'm doing the audio. I'm voicing the, one of his audiobooks right now, Defending the Undefendable 2. And I'm surprised, he's defending all this terrible stuff in this book that most people would hate to see people defend. But then all of a sudden now he's not taking a strong property-based stance on this, which I think is the libertarian position. The answer is private property. You own your house, you own your property, you get to decide who comes on it. Infected, not infected, it doesn't matter. The virus is a non-issue completely to your private property. You already get full dominion and agency over what happens on your private property, and you can already forcibly defend your property from other people, whether or not they have a virus. That problem is it's already solved. And the only way it becomes an unsolvable continuum problem is if you try and operate libertarian principles on top of a state, which doesn't work by definition. It's a self-detonating analogy. You can't libertarian principles don't operate on top of or side by side with a state. Somebody tell the Libertarian Party this.
Hold on 1 second. I had a call come through, and now your volume is off. I can barely hear you.
Go ahead and reconnect then. That's fine. Just refresh your page. I'll see you in a minute. And so while he's doing that, I'll just kind of comment more on, again, like I love Walter Block. I call him my spirit animal because he's so right on so many things, but at the same time, like, so I get to disagree, and my disagreements can be seen as unbiased because I really enjoy a lot of what he says. Welcome back, Shawn. You good now? Can you hear me? Oh, I can't hear you now. Make sure you're not muted. Oh wait, no, I think I had you muted. That was on my end. Say hi. Hello. Uh-oh. All right. We'll get that figured out.
There we are. Okay, we're good.
Nice. Okay, cool. Walter Block talks a lot about continuum problems, and when he hits a continuum problem, he's somehow content to just say, oh, well, that's a continuum problem, therefore I don't know the answer, therefore we cannot talk about that. And this was definitely one of those cases, and there are other continuum problems that he talks about. And I find that anytime I hit a continuum problem, it just means that I have framed the question loosely, improperly, or messily, and I need to go back and look at the question I'm trying to solve that is bringing up a continuum problem. So anyway, that was my rant on Block and continuum problems. And that, I mean, do you agree, disagree? Have any thoughts on the libertarian solution in this situation? Like, you don't get to force peaceful people to do anything, even if they're infected, unless it's your property. Like, what are your thoughts on that, Shawn?
Yeah, I mean, it really still comes down to, I mean, if the behavior is not malicious, meaning it's different if I know I have it and I'm walking around and I'm acting like an asshat, licking guardrails, sneezing and coughing on people. That's one thing. But unless it's malicious, and there's intent, we have to leave people alone. I mean, it's just, you own your body, you own your property. And just like every other category, there's intent is important. And, we need to let people live their own lives as long as they're not trying to harm other people, and unfortunately, not everything has a clear-cut answer, especially when we don't quite honestly know really what we're dealing with. How do you, we're getting new information every day. We're getting conflicting information every day. All you can do is exercise the best responsibility you can for your life, and hopefully most people are respectful of how they may impact the environment around them. But even still, it's not my responsibility, nor do I have the authority to force people to do or not do something because I think they may endanger me somewhere down the road. I don't have that power as a human being. That being said, our entire national defense program is based on the concept that we're going to hit you before you hit us, because somewhere down the road, you may at some time, we may think that you may do something against us, therefore we deem you a threat. So there's a certain amount of the American psyche that is geared towards taking action against people that haven't actually done anything to you. It is, it is part of our society, like it or not. It's part of the violent side of our society that most people don't consider violent.
One of those guys says, them, open the door. Me, what do you want? Them, we just want to talk. Me, how many are out there? 3. Then just talk to each other. Good stuff. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about that just came up and I added to my notes, so this is not really planned, but it was something I was thinking about earlier today when I was watching, no, it was yesterday. I was watching a YouTube video about a hospital that was making these life and death terrible decisions. Like, so if they determine that, there's a terminal case, maybe an older person, they were basically having to remove older people from ventilators because they were unsavable. And so that other people could use those ventilators. So, they were literally sort of like pulling the plug on people. And, what a terrible decision. The doctor, the video that I was watching, it was a doctor. And he was just bawling, crying when he was talking about it. And, he was making an appeal to people to, be cautious and to self-quarantine. And because he's at work making these, scarring decisions. I can't even imagine making those decisions. And then the article that was talking about this video was talking about, life being priceless, and therefore they should never have the right to remove, these resources from people. And so my brain was sort of stuck on that phrase that, life is priceless. People's lives are priceless. And I was trying to dissect that into what it meant. And I guess I just completely disagree. And that might be like a crazy extreme thing to say. I don't know, but I can explain myself. So when you talk about something being priceless, the first thing you have to think of is, what determines price? There is no inherent price in anything. Price is subjective. Value is subjective. Something is only as valuable as there is somebody that values it at that amount. And so therefore, any life doesn't have any inherent value. Now that sounds crazy and extreme, but hear me out. Without a valuer, something cannot be valued. And so you might value your life infinitely, but even then I was thinking that, I think I could challenge you on that. I don't think that most people even value their own life infinitely. I think everyone has some set of things that they would sacrifice their life for. Certainly if you have children, you probably value certain things. You probably value your life lower than things that might promote or help or save your children. I know I certainly do. If I didn't have children and I was some kind of narcissistic misanthrope or something, maybe then I would infinitely value my life to the point where, I would be happy with any cost to anyone else as long as I'm alive, something like that. But even then, does that person, what if that person caught a disease that just made him in excruciating pain and he was destined to live out the rest of his life, in a terrible situation? Would he not then value his life not infinitely? Maybe there's a circumstance of torment that, might affect that. So I'm just saying, one's life does not have an inherent infinite value. That's just not how value works. And of course, we all value our own lives generally higher than everyone else's. Even if you're some mother, what's her name? What's the Catholic? Mother Teresa. Even if you're a Mother Teresa, she still ate when there were starving people. So that means that at least in that moment, she valued her own self eating, even if it meant somebody, starving to death somewhere. And on the other end of that spectrum would be this is, I'm just letting you into my brain. I know it's insane, so forgive me, but it's if I had a $20 bill right here and somebody said, hey, did you know, Patrick, that $20 bill, if you hand it to me right now, I can go and buy this thing that will literally save someone's life right now. I would be like, take it. Here it is. Here's my $20. I'll go without, lunch to save someone's life. Okay. I think most people would do that. That's pretty freaking reasonable, right? Okay. Now let's say 10 seconds later, they came up to me and said, oh, hey, do you have another $20? I got another life I can save. I'd probably be like, yeah, here you go. And maybe several $100s later, I realized that, I've spent my food money for my family for a week or two, and then, they keep asking, eventually, I'm just saying, eventually we're going to get to a point where we stop handing the $20 because we have to feed ourselves. We have to clothe my children. There's a point in between $20 and I don't know what the number is, where I'm going to start valuing, my life and my family's life over others. not infinitely. Again, I'm just kind of talking through this. Let me know how crazy I am. Somebody just subscribed. Was that our first subscriber ever? Supposedly Free has subscribed. What's up, man? Good to see you. Oh, that was on YouTube. So Twitch just affiliated our channel on Twitch. So I'm excited to find, to get our first Twitch subscriber. Anyway, so yeah. And so when we're talking about hospitals, diverting resources around to people based on how they feel they can subjectively save the most lives or whatever, there is no infinite value. I mean, like we see this go ahead. I've been blabbing for an hour.
No. I was gonna say people. I would say for many people, like myself, when I say life is priceless, I'll say my son's life is priceless because he cannot be replaced. There is no value I can put on the experience of being his father. He is priceless. That being said, from a real economic standpoint, from an economic business model, the 40-year-old is more valuable than the 80-year-old, especially to the government. One is still paying taxes. The other is actually asking for their tax money back. So in reality, yeah, like making the decision between the 40 and the 80-year-old, the 40-year-old has considerably more market value than the 80-year-old from, what they consume and everything else. I'm having weird things happening with my phone, and I'm not sure what's up with that.
Look like the apocalypse just happened over there. I got worried.
Maybe the phone has the Rona. I don't know.
The Rona.
The vid. I don't know. The vid. The Rona. I'm not sure exactly. The cool kids keep changing the abbreviation of it. I like COFIF 19. COFIF 1984 seems to be, much more accurate at this point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you were finished, I'll go ahead. It's exposing hypocrisy on all sides everywhere. You have Democrats cheering on things that Trump is doing. You have Republicans cheering on Trump, literally pushing actual socialist stuff like socialism onto the country, and these supposedly Republicans that stand against this stuff are like, oh yeah, Trump wants it, it's cool. Everyone is full of shit, I guess is what I'm saying, Shawn.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, it's been that way forever, it seems. Republicans like the socialism that they like, and that is, I've gone round and round with them about, public education, and I'll be the first to admit I put my son back on the welfare system this last year, and he goes to charter school. But if you bring up, and mind you, now they do it for about 40 cents, 40% less than the ISDs do per student, but nonetheless, it's actually closer to what me and my ex actually pay in taxes that cover his bill. But either way, it's still welfare. But when I remind Republicans that public school was designed on a socialist model to create socialists, they go into this bizarre cognitive dissonance, and they keep talking about how, we need to stop socialism, but they're knowingly, willingly putting their child in a system created by socialists to create more socialists. Just like on the other side, the left likes the Constitution when they like the Constitution, and usually if the red team is going to violate the Constitution, all of a sudden the blue team can read the Constitution. And then it just flip-flops back and forth. It's merely used at convenience. Nobody sticks to the principle of the document at all. So
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm sorry. There's this dude named New Nations Unity in the comments that has been going on about like organ thieves for like 45 minutes. I don't know what he's saying, but dude,
maybe
chill out. Maybe
that's what's going on in China.
Oh,
Black
yeah.
market harvesting of organs.
Speaking of China, this just in. This is Thailand medical news. So I mean, we don't know how much of anything is bullshit right now. But if this is true, actually, this is back from February.
Well, it's on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's true.
Medical experts and virologists are concerned about the high number of reinfections appearing in so-called cured or treated coronavirus patients in China. So this is hitting mainstream news here in the U.S. today. Not that that means anything. But I think this is another one of those, logical truth statements that if it's true that people are getting reinfected, and this says back in February, this is back in February numbers, keep that in mind, 72 such cases have been properly documented according to Chinese authorities. Now, I know that anything Chinese authorities say is probably highly suspect. So maybe we assume that that's an order of magnitude or more higher or lower, who knows? But if it's possible to get reinfected by this thing easily, then it's worth pointing out that all of this quarantine garbage that's happening is pointless. Like, if people are getting reinfected, then what that means is that we now need to be quarantined for the rest of time. That is the only way quarantining will have an effect, because the day you end the quarantine, then, this whole flatten the curve thing that everybody's preaching right now is pointless, is meaningless. Like, the curve goes right back up into its spike the moment you end the quarantine. So, okay, I guess we're going to quarantine forever. What do you think, Shawn?
Oh, it's interesting. I would love to know, some data on, the age, the gender, the background, the rest of the details of the people that have been, supposedly reinfected. I would be curious to know, what that number actually looks like, or, what the rest of the stats are on them. It's still, I don't think we haven't talked about, my observation this morning, about the population that's roaming around South Dallas right now, that's
tell us about that.
Right.
Yeah, tell us about that. What have you been up to?
Well, so when I was I noticed it yesterday, but particularly today when I was leaving the Suitmobile, I made a wrong turn, and so I had to go through the south side of town up into downtown, and that's definitely a lower economic area, although gentrification is working that way, but it's still lower economic. And I noticed 3 to 4 groups of, I'm going to say, I know at least 2 out of the 4 camps were more of a permanent homeless fixture. One of them, I believe you and I walked past on Christmas Eve. But then I drive past and I noticed there's a little enclosed green space. It wasn't really a park because there wasn't any equipment in it, but it was a green space. And there were probably 30 to 40 people, sports shade tents set up, lawn chairs out, all hanging out. Look across the street, there's like 8 or 10 dudes, hanging out in front of the store. And I'm thinking, whoa, if quarantining people or shutting people in is such a concern, and everybody's so very concerned about you need to have your travel papers with you, why isn't the city of Dallas down here making this problem go away, dispersing these people? Because while the rest of us are trying to be responsible, and a lot of people are shutting in, and the rest of us are taking, my hands are literally prunes at this point. While we're all taking these safety measures, you've got a large populace of people, we'll at least call it several hundred, I saw 50, 60, 70 today. So whatever I didn't see, there's hundreds more that already probably have some respiratory issues. Well, if they're not being held to the same standard, how long is it before they walk into the local store to get a pack of Swishers, bottle of water, a 40, whatever it is, and they exchange currency and they touch things and they walk out. And then this reignites the entire thing again. So if all of this National Guard is about safety and shutting everybody in is about safety, why is a population of people that are probably, odds are, going to have some immune weaknesses because they're malnourished and they're sleeping outside in inclement weather? Why are these people, not being helped, or being dispersed? And by no mistake am I advocating that they actually round these people up and quarantine them. That's the last thing I want for them. But why are they demanding of suburbia something that they're not demanding of people in the inner city? It doesn't make sense, because if this is that contagious, then why aren't they dealing with that contagion? And now, mind you, the only way they could deal with it would be awful, awful, awful. It would result in, them mass incarceration. They would just, turn it into another loose stare at Susan Key's building and throw some respirators in there and, pretend it's a quarantine safety zone. But the reality is that they're pumping this propaganda and fear into the suburban communities, but their actions in the inner city tell a different story. So I'm kind of with going along with, if people can get reinfected that easily, that's one problem of the shut-in, or it shows one glaring, defect in the shut-in being a solution. But if we're allowing a highly susceptible population of people to migrate around the city and engage in commerce, whatever that looks like, then everybody is still unprotected, and the contagion could pop back out at any given moment. While they've added extra security in downtown Dallas, my son's mother works in downtown, and so they've had to ramp up security in the sense that the homeless people have now become the predominant population that you see on the streets in downtown Dallas, because most of the workers have gone home. But like my ex, she's considered essential. She's in the financial district. And so now her safety, because she is considered essential, her safety is being, she's being left a lot more vulnerable, because 95% of her office building is now closed. So when she goes into the office, and when she leaves later at night, because she's been blessed with a lot of business, thanks to the Fed doing what they did, she's now been exposed to more danger through all of this as well. I don't know. I'm super glad I convinced her to get her CHL last year. That's all I can say on that. But it seems to be some very conflicting stories, which still brings me back to the conclusion that this is mostly an exercise in a power grab, and two, how effortlessly or how can we get the sheep to herd themselves and quarantine themselves without actually having to use force? How many people will literally just throw the shackles on themselves, and then volunteer their neighbor to be shackled as well? And that's what seems like is happening right now, is people are voluntarily shackling themselves, and they're also comfortable shackling you and I in the process.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I twisted around there a little bit.
No, it was all good stuff. I think it's, we've got some questions in the comments, and I want to address some things that I was asked on Facebook too. I think they're really good prompts. But before we do that, I want to point out that, the government has already done significantly more damage to people, to us, to our assets, to the economy, than this virus itself. Like, the government virus has already done vastly more damage. We have so many people, I know multiple people, you know multiple people, that have already lost their jobs. They have no income right now. You've lost, I'll let you talk about it if you want, but I mean, like, people are losing their income, which now makes them significantly more vulnerable to just life than they were before. And there's the virus itself has nothing to do with that. If anybody should be calling for anything at this point, like if I could suggest that you guys all do something on social media right now, just to kind of help us get the sea change that I think we need, it's like, okay, that's enough. That's enough, government. Let's open these stores back up. Let's get things going again. Let's get this economy moving again. Like, we just need to because very soon, if it hasn't already happened, if it's not already too late, the economy, the people's livelihood, people's health, and their bank accounts and their assets, it's going to fall off a cliff, and it's going to become very difficult for people to recover. Right now, people have only been out of work for a week, sometimes maybe 2 weeks. But once you start hitting a month of unemployment and no income, that starts becoming impossible to recover from. And so, like, enough is enough. Now is the time that everybody that is healthy and younger, that might not be as much of a risk, I think. And I'm not a medical doctor. This is just my opinion. But if we allow the government to continue this much longer at all, it's going to be very, very difficult to recover from. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's going to be people. I mean, well, I have a feeling a lot of the people that are going to need it, that are going to be in that middle bracket of income, like usual, they're usually the ones that carry the most weight and get sandbagged the most. So that middle income, 45 to 90K a year dude, which I'm generally in, he's not going to get much. He's going to get some scraps. And then when there's a small rebound, he's probably going to end up taking a job, making 60 cents on the dollar compared to what he did before. And it's going to be like 2008 rolling into 9 again. You better just be happy to have a job. And so you're going to work longer hours, and you're going to work for less pay, and you're going to work shittier conditions, because you have no choice, because it's either that or be desolate. I'm fortunate that I kind of grew up in an uncertain environment when I was younger. So I'll say I adapt to uncertainty a little better than the average person, just by product of environment. But the average person does not operate that way. They want to know what's going on, where their next paycheck's going to come from. And we're going to see long-lasting repercussions from this. I think even just from a societal standpoint, that will have an economic effect. If this magically went away in 21 days, there's still going to be a population of people that are going to be afraid of this, that aren't going to have the same shopping patterns that they used to, aren't going to have the same travel patterns that they used to. There's a certain amount of the American psyche that has been forever changed. As I've explained to my 13-year-old, this is his 9/11. This is a power grab. This is a money vacuum, and the psyche of the country is changing. And so, again, I mean, the economy is forever changed from this, because people will not have the same buying and life patterns after this. Some of those will be good. Hopefully, you and I have talked about it. God willing, a lot of these people are going to figure out how poor the public education system is, and they're going to take a step forward in their child's education. But I don't think that we're going to see the economic recovery anytime in the next 20 years. I mean, I think there's going to have to be a wholesale change in the way the economy operates for it to ever truly heal. We can do what we did in 2008, dump a bunch of money into things, and then, a few years down the road, it'll get worked out until the next time. But this is also, it would be a great time for an economic boogaloo. There's more than one boogaloo that can happen right now. And an economic entrepreneurial revolution could theoretically happen. I don't have a lot of faith in the people to do that, but the opportunities will be there.
Hey, good to see you, David. Welcome to the show. There's a chance it could be more impactful on the average person than 9/11, just because like 9/11 is for the vast majority of people here was something that you watched on TV, and this is like personally touching, literally changing the behavior of every single person in the country's life. I mean, that's probably it's probably an invalid comparison, but it's certainly impacting people.
I only meant I call it his 9/11 because of the power grab and the psyche change. Now I agree. This definitely touches people in a different way because it's so much more of an invisible boogeyman. Not that the war on terror isn't an invisible boogeyman, but this is a very different kind. But I only draw that parallel because what I'm seeing from both a government power grab and from a corporate financial grab, it looks like we're going in the same direction. And kind of like post 9/11, where I would read these stories about people that sat on their couch for just months, just CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever, just fear porn all day, could not get off the couch, just consumed by it. We're seeing some of that same consumption with people, where it's just the next confirmation bias stat that they can cling on to. Oh, look, death tolls are going up. Oh, look, confirmed cases are going up. No real data going behind it, no context to the data, just drinking in the fear porn. And so I do think, I think there's a lot of mirrors. It is different, but I think psychologically and economically, there's some parallels to be drawn for sure. I think there's lessons to be drawn when we look at the Patriot Act and what the stimulus bill's overreach is as well.
So, real quick, Phobes says the entire point of flattening the curve has nothing to do with how many people get infected, but preventing the medical system from becoming overloaded because a shitload of people end up in the hospital all at once. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not a medical professional, so I could be wrong. But if people can easily get reinfected, then then quarantine doesn't slow the curve down, because as soon as you lift the quarantine, the curve spike can start right up again, because no one gains immunity after being infected. They can just be reinfected again. So the only way to not have a spike in infections is to, I guess, let it kill off everyone, because that's the only way you get immune to it. If you can be reinfected, is to be dead. But again, I'm not an expert. I could totally be wrong. Okay, so go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, well, if the idea of the medical community and the healthcare system is to keep people alive, so flattening the curve is about keeping people alive, regardless, they may be doing it through the healthcare system, but it's not flattening the curve isn't to protect the healthcare system. It's to keep people alive. We just need to keep the healthcare system going to do that.
He says, yes, but it allows a grossly unprepared market to properly prepare. I'm not entirely sure the market wasn't already prepared if the government wasn't in the way. Like, for example, the what is it? The ventilating machines. Like, within a week, people had already, had released 3D printable ventilating designs where you can print this frame and throw a PC fan with a filter on it, and a hose to a painting mask, one of those, if you're gonna paint a car, the breathing masks that they wear, like you basically like plug a hose into it, attached to a little box with a PC fan on it, and you have a ventilator. Like, but that is illegal because you're making medical devices that aren't licensed, So like, if the government wasn't there, I think the market could definitely respond very quickly. So. Anyway, I don't know. Let's get into these Facebook questions that people posted. So I made a post today basically saying that the government virus has caused vastly more damage than this actual virus has caused. Just its response has already and probably will continue to outdamage the virus. And one of the responses I got, and let me just read this to you as if it was a question to you, and you can respond, and then I can chime in with my thoughts too. So the question was, You're an anarchist. What can we, the people, do to stop the madness? Or should those who are producers just retreat to their gulches if they haven't already and let the rest fend for themselves in the vortex of this drain we're all circling? Even producers need other producers to meet their needs. What do you suggest we, who are willing to take action, do?
Well, I think to an extent, like what I'm doing with reaching out, trying to make sure that people have meals, and people have supplies that, are less fortunate than me. I think that action can look a lot of different ways to a lot of different people, depending on, what you have access to and what your skill set is. I have no money right now, but I have the time. So I'm recruiting the money so that I can use my time to help other people. My question to him would be, what skill do you have? What can you bring? Because I think you and I, as individuals, we can offer something different to a community and anyone else. I don't think that it's going back to everybody wants these great, tidy answers when I don't think that there are. As long as government maintains its monopoly, we are hamstrung to a certain extent on what we can do. If they're going to block the production of ventilators, or they're going to block somebody from opening up a care unit or opening up housing for somebody or a daycare, as long as the government is going to intervene, the action we can take is very limited, and is probably your energy is best served in your community, or in the surrounding areas.
Yeah, I totally agree. If somebody had space in their house and wanted to care for the sick, they could, even under the direction or the advice of a knowledgeable doctor on what can be done. They could take people into their house. They could hook them up to ventilators when they needed them. If they could take the overflow and at least do something. But I guarantee you, if somebody did that today and somebody died while in the care of this, even if they wouldn't have made it into a hospital because the hospital was jam-packed, even if it, an actual hospital with actual doctors that are licensed, was not available for them, if a person took them in and tried to care for them and they died, I guarantee you that after this is all over and after it calms down, that person is going to be in jail, in court, being in big trouble for providing medical care without a license. Like the government in every way imaginable retards and stands in the way of any kind of actual solution that might be able to quickly scale to handle a problem like this. Shout out to Lena Smith in the comments, my wife in the comments of another video in a row on this channel. That is a rare treat. So everybody say hi to my wife, Lena Smith there. Well, let's see. So what can we, the people, do to stop the madness? Phobe says...
hold on, and I would like to clarify by madness. I would be curious to know, when referring to the madness, that looks a lot of different ways. Calling to check on your friends, and try to push and promote kindness, and community action. That's one way to combat the madness. Because I don't know. I could do a lot of different things with madness. Are we talking the National Guard rolling in? Because that may look like Big Igloo Boys. I don't know. The madness of, hoarding teepee. Well, if you get an opportunity to score some, share it with your community. If it's the madness of everybody is really living in fear and uncertainty, then the solution is to try to put out as much kindness and compassion as you can, and try to be a vessel of calm for people, so that they can at least look to others and be like, okay, he's got it together, she's got it together, I can too. So in a lot of ways, it's living well and leading by action, I think that can help calm the madness. But that's, again, how is he defining madness, or she?
I agree again. So I think the first thing that we can all do, and I'm going to speak individually because I don't like talking in collectives, but each of us should individually just make sure that our shit is in order first. Like, get your personal situation worked out to where you are solid. You have food, you have water, you have maybe a couple extra tanks of gas sitting in the garage, and get yourself in a position where you are comfortable and you are safe, and stay in your house unless you just have to go out. Get your own life in order so that you can then help the people that you care about around you that may or may not have been able to or have not done that, and then set about helping the people around you in as safely as you possibly can. Like, we have a lot of the local activists in Dallas are constantly, sending messages to each other saying, "Hey, how you doing? Just checking out on you. Let me know if you need anything." You did this like several days ago. You called me up, like, "Hey man, I've been doing grocery store stuff or whatever. Let me know if you need anything and I can go out and help you, take care of stuff." It's exactly what you can be doing. Once you have your house in order, then you have the ability to safely then help the people around you. And that is what actually makes the madness go away, is when everybody is handling their own business so that they can then help the people around them handle theirs. And just generally, just avoid contact with people voluntarily. And then lastly, I'll say, resist as vocally as possible this insanity that the government is foisting on us right now. Like, every step of the way, even if it seems perfectly justified and perfectly reasonable. Like, I'm staying in my house, but you know what? I did that on the 5th of this month before anybody even was worried. And much less now that the government is ordering me to. Like, that was voluntary. So let's point that out and say, look, if people are reasonable, they will voluntarily take the measures that they need to protect themselves. Pointing guns at people is not only unjustified, but it is immoral. Like, you can't threaten someone's life for their own safety. That's like self-contradictory and absurd. Like, I'm going to threaten to kill you if you resist my attempts to cage you so that you can be safe and alive. It's like, sorry, you don't get to try and kill somebody to keep them alive. That's dumb and
you should have just listened to the officer's request.
Yeah. So that's what I have to say to that person. And what I'll probably do is link this video to that person when it goes live. The next question that we had is, and I'll ask this to you again. What happens to our economy if our healthcare system collapses? Shawn?
What happens to our economy if our healthcare system collapses? I don't have health insurance. So I don't know that I have a healthcare system to work off of. When I run out of cash and I'm sick, I just die. So I don't know. That's been my solution for a number of years now. I'm broke. He gone. Healthcare solution solved. I don't know. I'm not an economist. And I don't know what they mean by healthcare system crashing. It's kind of vague. I've heard a lot of speculation about all of this. I think if the healthcare system crashes, a lot of old people are going to die. And so that's going to be a lot of Social Security that doesn't need to be paid out. So the government's going to get quite a boom in that one. So it's good for the government's economy. The healthcare system is not going to crash. It may look different, and it really needs to look different, but it's not going to crash, because we're not going to wake up one day and all the doctors are just not going to be doctors and all the nurses aren't going to be nurses. And there's not going to be millions of people that just stop caring about helping other people tomorrow. That won't happen. So the healthcare system won't crash because people want to help each other. And there's a lot of doctors who sunk themselves into a lot of debt and spent a lot of time going to school so that they could become wealthy doctors. And they're not going to wake up one day and decide that they don't like money anymore. So I don't know. I think crash is the wrong word. It will change. It will morph. I don't know what that looks like because we don't know exactly how that might happen. I know that I was at least, and this is as of 2 days ago, but I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a CFO for a hospital conglomerate, and they mostly do secondary hospitalization. So after you get out of ICU or you have a bypass or you knee reconstruction, whatever it is, you go there for some more intensive rehabilitation. His hospitals are empty right now. They've got hundreds of ventilators. They've got doctors, nurses standing around doing nothing. They're gearing towards this epic overflow that, at least to date, has not happened. So I don't know exactly how or why the healthcare system would crash, other than, government created monopolies that have put a stranglehold on so much of the healthcare industry. I think, well, and going back to what the valve, I believe it was in Italy, there was a valve that they didn't have for a bunch of respirators, that they had the respirators, but they were missing this valve. And I believe the valve was something like, it was either $1,100 or $11,000. It was some absurd number. And it took like an extra 10 days for guys with 3D printers to make it because they couldn't, because there was a patent control on it. But once they were able to 3D print it, it cost them $3 to make. So where is the crash in the healthcare going to come from? It's going to come from government regulation and government overreach. And as long as we continue to take it, as we are taking it in the shorts in almost every avenue, as long as we continue to take it, we're going to continue to facilitate that crash. The problem is if we don't identify what the crash is really from, i.e. government, i.e. patent control and monopolies that are created and enforced by government, if we don't address that as the actual issue, then the hydra that takes its place is going to be worse than the one we have today. And we're going to look like the Pac Indy Railroad healthcare system, or we're going to look like the CCP's healthcare system, or the NHS. We're going to replace it with something even worse if we don't identify what the actual cause of the crash will be. And the crash will be because of government. So that's my thoughts on it.
I think, well, here are my thoughts. I think, so the question was, what happens to our economy if our healthcare system collapses? First of all, there is no such thing as our economy and our healthcare system. Economy is just a term that's used to encapsulate the human action of millions of people, the human interactions between millions of people. What does that collapsing look like? Well, that would probably look like the market correcting itself because it's been knocked out of whack. Who's knocking it out of whack? Oh, the government, the only coercive platform that does that to the market. So if it collapses, the fault is with the government. So if anything, this should be a warning shot across the bow that the government needs to be removed from anything to do with the economy so that next time there's a crisis, that there isn't this freak out danger of it collapsing. And I can say the exact same thing about the medical system, the healthcare system collapsing. Is it in danger of collapsing? Well, that means that the government is an utter and complete failure at managing anything to do with healthcare, because there is hardly an industry that isn't more regulated and controlled than healthcare by the government. So that means that if it's in danger of collapsing, the government is a failure and needs to get the F away from the healthcare system at all costs, in all ways. It's failing. It is a failure by its own admission. If it's having to step in and regulate and help and print money, printers go burr, then it's admitting failure. Go away. You're done. You lost. You're admitting you fucked up. You're done. Get away from it. If the healthcare system collapses, it's because the supply was not able to scale to meet the demand. Well, who's controlling supply? There's only one group controlling supply in healthcare, and that is the government. You can't become a doctor without a permission slip from government. You can't get that permission slip without going and getting approval from a medical board that is monopolized by force through the government. You know, your medical license comes from this board of doctors that is empowered and monopolized by the government. So there's only one place you can go to become a doctor, and if you try and do it without that process, you get jailed. If you practice medicine without that permission slip, you go to jail. You want to open a new hospital? Guess what? You can't do that without a permission slip from the same people. You want to open a medical school to train new doctors. Guess what? You can't do it because the supply of medical schools is controlled and limited by the exact same people that are monopolized by force through the government. So if there's a chance that this medical system is going to collapse, you got to look at what's limiting the supply, because that's what collapse means. Collapse means there's an overwhelming demand on the system for a service that the system cannot provide. It gets maxed out. Well, you got to look at what's limiting supply. There's only one thing limiting supply in this medical system, and that's the government. So if anything we learn from this situation is that the fact that this system is in danger of collapsing or being overloaded means that the thing that is in charge of controlling it, or the thing that is forcibly limiting it, has failed you. That's my rant.
Hercules.
Okay, so
But it is fact.
I have an immediate family member that is and recently became and finished the process of becoming a medical doctor. So I have had inside information about the entire process. You know, it's like a 15-year process. It takes like it took him so many years before he got his first job that it became a running joke between us. He's like, oh, you know, it's been like 15 years. You know, you're like in your mid-20s. You still don't have a job. Well, that's because he's going through this insane process and jumping through insane hoops. I mean, granted, a lot of it's valid, but a lot of it is just retarded. And we would have a lot more doctors if it weren't for this system. And we'd have a lot more medical schools creating a lot more doctors if it wasn't for this system. And we'd have a lot more hospitals and a lot more care centers. Like, picture Care Now. We have Care Nows everywhere, which are like these little pop-up mini medical places you can go if you have lower level stuff. Like, that stuff could be everywhere. It could be ubiquitous.
And America is not producing the amount of doctors that it used to, and they had to tighten the requirements for like physicians' assistants, because so many people were opting to just be a PA instead of an MD, because they didn't have to take on the liability. They didn't have to take on the malpractice insurance and all of the overhead that was coming with it. And why was that a problem? Because of regulation. You know, why are we seeing so many doctors come from India and China to practice here? You know, they are, compared to where they came from, like this is an amazing amount of freedom. But if you look at our system, you know, and the control apparatus that it is, you know, we're continuing to drive down the quality of the healthcare and the healthcare providers by overregulating and creating that power pyramid that's becoming more narrow and more narrow at the top, with less room for people to actually thrive and grow underneath it. They can't grow in the shadow of government.
Like this immediate relative of mine, like within a week of this situation sort of flaring up, he was like texting me excitedly about how he's designing this do-it-yourself ventilator system. Like, he's got like this cool thing with like nothing but like a nose clip and like a Ziploc bag and a little piece of, you know, fish tank tubing and a PC fan and a cardboard box. You know, you can get something remotely resembling a ventilator. And you're... Liberty After Dark says a statist would say you'd increase malpractice. I wouldn't increase malpractice. Maybe malpractice would happen, but malpractice happens now. everywhere. And a lot of medical companies and a lot of doctors and a lot of insurance companies are shielded from the effects of malpractice by laws. Let me hear you preach it, Shawn, on vaccinations. Now's your chance, Shawn. Now's your chance.
Hey, here's a bless.
I mean, you have an entire you have an entire category of products that's shielded from malpractice suits by the government. You might have more malpractice, yeah, but you might also have a lot less because people would be personally liable when they messed up. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I believe that medical malpractice is in the top 5 killers in the United States. So we're already, medical malpractice is rampant. Now, there's also a reason why you call it practicing medicine. It's not an exact science. It is ever evolving.
That's a word game. That's a word game.
Okay, fair enough.
Right. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, we're...
That's not how a lot of people use that word.
Some things are going to increase and some things are going to decrease. Does the benefit, is the juice worth the squeeze, I should say. And yeah, you're going to have some malpractice in some areas, but here's this interesting thing about freedom. It comes with personal responsibility. If you choose to go to the doctor, if you choose to go to Dr. Nick from The Simpsons, and he cuts off a leg when he was supposed to be, giving you a vaccination, it's kind of on you for not doing your research as to who you went to see. Or I think a couple of years ago, some girls down in Deep Ellum were doing like ass implants, like out of, just some random store in downtown Dallas.
I just got affiliate on Twitch. I'm doomed. I'm hopeless. I'm kidding.
I don't even know what that means.
It means you get approved to make a tiny amount of money on Twitch.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, it's not going to last long. Don't worry.
Is it because I'm talking about ass implants? No, the Kardashians do it all the time.
Just joking. All right. So,
anyway, the point was that this poor young lady went to a place that clearly was not a medical doctor and clearly to 2 women who are not qualified professionals. And she wanted a cosmetic procedure done cheaply. At what point does the person who opted to pay for this service, out of the back of basically a clown car, at what point are they not personally responsible for taking the actions?
At no point are they not personally responsible is the correct answer.
Yeah. Unless those people deliberately and maliciously hid the fact or lied about cutting corners or claimed they were using a product that they weren't actually using, then you've got a different story because there was intent to deceive somebody in order to get the sale. That would be different than me showing you, my hatchet operation that I have, and you going, well, yeah, but I really want this done, and it cost me 10 cents on the dollar, so let's roll the dice. There's still
of all the cases you could have picked, of all the examples you could have picked. No, this is great. It's good. It's good.
Well, it happened right downtown, so it was just kind of on the. It's local goofy malpractice cases that I was thinking of right in Dallas, and I just remember reading now and being like, why would anybody do that? Like, why? There's
almost no scenario in which the government cannot be blamed. Like, those procedures are hella expensive, not because, the demand is off the charts, but because the supply of people that will do it is artificially, coercively, at gunpoint, limited. Like, if there's really that much demand for that practice, then without the government in the way, there's going to be a whole lot more people providing it, which brings down the cost of the service. And with competition comes services like eBay's rating thing, like Yelp. You could Yelp your ass injection doctors to see which one's done the best job or had the least complications or has the most 5-star ratings or whatever. So like, can't really have that right now. You can't really have that. And you have people looking for these, what did you call them? Shady. I forgot what word you used for it, but like out of the trunk or something, like back of the.
Yeah. I mean, out of the back of the shop. I mean,
yeah. So, like you have people looking for those under the table alternatives because the legit alternatives are crazy expensive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, while the black market has some amazing things to offer, it also has some dangers that come with it. And like in all other businesses, prohibition seems more dangerous, and this kind of government regulation is a form of prohibition, and so by restricting people's access to it, we're creating this black market. And usually that's where the dangerous black market, hides out, because there are people that just want to make money and do not care about the consequences that will happen to the people that they're servicing. And so once again, another government created problem. And there is no perfect system. This isn't Star Trek. Not everybody's going to live. We're not going to a cashless society. This isn't peaceful. There are evil, rotten humans out there, and that will not change. People are going to die of unfortunate circumstances. That is not going to change. Life is dangerous. Being a human is an uncertain thing many days. And so we need to look to ourselves and our network to help keep us balanced and help us make the best decisions we can and be as safe as we can while still trying to have a good quality of life and not look to daddy government.
So let's wrap it up with a what we think people should be doing now. Not that I am some kind of medical authority on any of this. Just like what do you think? Like if you could talk to the entire world right now, what would you suggest that they do?
I mean, I really just want to say, don't be a douche. That's honestly what I want to say.
It's actually a pretty good one.
My day-to-day life these days, I already washed my hands and didn't touch gas pump handles and didn't touch escalator rails, but before this ever started. But exercise a little more caution or a little more mindfulness when you're out right now, and particularly if you're sick. But just exercise mindfulness about kind of the hygiene and the scenario around you, but don't live in fear. I mean, that to me seems to be exacerbating everything. It is the fear that is driving all of this. Sure, don't go out 16 times a day. Make it 2. Lessen your opportunity for exposure right now till we know a little bit more, have a little bit more understanding of all of this. But don't, I would say, obviously, unless you are in an immune compromised position, and then obviously that is a different thing. I'm a 45-year-old dude who eats right and exercises pretty regularly. So, I feel comfortable that for the most part, I'm in a lower risk category. So it's really about just trying to exercise some good common sense and responsibility, situational awareness, and trying not to live in fear. Really, I think that will be the doomsayer for us all, is if we all get consumed by the fear. By the time we look up, it's going to be too late. By the time we realize the error of the ways, it will be too late if we live in fear. So don't be a douche, be responsible, and have that situational awareness. Maybe I still, right now, when I'm going out, I throw my clothes in the washer when I walk in the back door. If I've been out in a kind of highly contaminated or potentially highly contaminated, if I've been around a lot of people, just throw that stuff in the washer. So I'm doing a little bit more laundry right now. I've got the time, and that's really it. I mean, I don't think that I think that this overreaction and drastic measures is just, exacerbating everything. So, again, situational awareness, and try to be, and I've got a finger pointing back at me when I say this. Be mindful that not everybody is adjusting real to this, and try to put some kindness out there for people, because there's people that things are coming out sideways and they're coming out in fear. And if we could just show a little bit more kindness, a little bit more compassion, and a little bit more leadership, I think people will welcome it. We just have to show them the way to do it. So wash your hands and don't be a filth pig. That's kind of it. Everything else, I'm going to be talking in circles. So
and don't be a dick. Yeah, I like that one too.
Well, yeah.
All right, so mine would be, somebody, one of our local friends asked me to actually do an episode on this, and maybe I will. So this is not going to be like an episode's worth of content on it. This is going to be a quick response that maybe, if people want, we can do something more formal on it. But they asked me to talk about coping mechanisms. And how my family's coping with something like this. And, we have been cautious against viruses for literally 2 years now. Like, this is almost nothing new. Like, when we decided to go on lockdown, we've already done this several times over the past couple years because my daughter's immunocompromised. So there's phases of time over the past couple years where her immune system is somewhat non-existent. And so we're used to hand sanitizing constantly, washing our clothes, when we come in, and staying away from large gatherings of people. And in the really extreme times, we just try and stay in the house and do the whole thing. So like, it's almost like this part of it is not really new or terrible for us. So it's like we've already coped and we're used to it, but a lot of people are not used to this. A lot of people are not used to restricting their limit. People are losing their jobs. Like most of the negative stuff that is coming out is because of these ordered closings of businesses, which are affecting people's incomes, which, the bills don't stop being due. It's not like I can stop paying my car payment right now and just claim it's COVID 1984, paying the bills right now. It's not how it works. So the short version of what I'm saying is kind of what I said previously in other videos about other things. It's like we forget, because life is pretty good in the first world, we forget that life includes suffering. Existing includes suffering. This is part of it. This is part and parcel of existing in this universe, folks. That bad things happen, people die, viruses kill, systems are stressed. And it is no one's at the end of the day, it's no one's responsibility but our own to exert our existence in the world, prepare for as much as we can, choose our decisions, pick our risks, make our beds and lie in it. Okay. So that's the short version of what I want to say. Like, bad things happen. We need to accept that as part of existence, because we can end our existence. We can check out anytime we want. It's sort of like choosing to continue living minute by minute is sort of gambling that life will be good to us, or at least more positive than negative. It's like choosing to live is a gamble. And if you're going to gamble, you might as well set the stakes and go and be happy with it and know that you've chosen that, and take the, bad rolls of the dice as they come and just fight, because your atoms are stuck together for a limited time, and you should be excited by that even when it's painful sometimes, and punch back, so to speak. Okay, so that's enough of that for now, I guess. And then 4 things. This is what I would suggest if I could talk to everyone right now. It's kind of what I already said. Handle your own business first. Get your stuff in order. Get your household protected. Get the resources you need to be safe for a month or 3 months. Get the food and the water and the weapons and the gasoline and, the basic prep. This is like the justification for all the prepping that, people felt awkward about for so long. Typically, it's so good in the first world that it's been so good for so long that people forgot the basic need to be prepared for things like this with food and and water and things like that. And even I felt kind of weird, like doing the prepping stuff for the past 10 years. Like 15 years ago, I bought like a month's worth of food for my family, and I bought a 50-gallon water barrel, and I was like, man, this is kind of weird. I'm putting, a lot of resources into this stuff, and it's probably going to be a waste or whatever. No, it wasn't a waste. It was amazing. Like, I've got a closet with food, and I've got water, and I've got gas, and so when all this stuff happens, it's just like, oh, well, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about scrambling at the grocery store for basic resources. Let's not forget this lesson, and let's pass this lesson on to our kids. Like, it's not weird. It's normal to have basic necessities prepared. So handle your business. Then, number 2, get networked with your local friends, form support networks, offer to help people, check in on people, do what you can with reasonable safety to help the people around you once you have your stuff in order. Then take reasonable precautions. If you don't need to go in large groups, stay the hell away from large groups. If you don't need to go around older people, don't go around older people. Just reasonable stuff, reasonable voluntary stuff. Number 4, and this is really the important one right now, in my opinion. You need to oppose government tyranny in this area loudly to everyone at all times. The message on all your social media, on all your communications, on anybody you encounter is that enough of this. It's making it worse now. We need to get everybody back to work as soon as reasonably possible and as safely as possible. And if anything, the good stuff that, like a lot of employers are resistant to remote workers and people working from home, that if there is a good thing that comes out of all this, it might be that people discovered that it's possible to have remote employees being productive without having to have a central office. Like, this might be the thing that sort of pushes civilization into that new paradigm, and I'm hopeful and excited that might be the result of this, is that office spaces become less significant, important, and required by employers than they have been forever. I'm hoping that that's what comes out of this, and that people can resume their jobs remotely, just normal life. But anyway, so handle your business, help your friends and neighbors, take responsible precautions, and just make a point to, on all your social media and everybody that you talk to, oppose this government tyranny now. Let's end it. Let's put out the message that, look, it's enough. It's enough. We're done. That they've already done too far. We need to reel this back. People are already voluntarily, protecting themselves. Let's get the government out of this before they destroy people. Like, literally, they're going to end lives if they keep people from being able to make money and be productive. So those are my things. Anything else, Shawn?
Stay strapped or get clapped.
Perfect. Let's end on that. Guys, let me check the comments.
Oh.
What does it mean, no commies? Yes, it means no communists. Communists are not allowed on Twitch comments. Sorry, not sorry. Let's see what else. What were you saying, Shawn?
No, I'm going to leave it on what I last said. Seemed like a good one.
That's good. All right. All right, guys. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. It was a good stream. And we have been streaming some cool video games over on our game streaming platforms. Every night recently, we've been streaming the new Half-Life Alyx VR on Twitch, DLive, and Mixer. So check those out if you're interested in watching some of that stuff. Otherwise, we will talk to you soon. Take it easy.